Today we're going to listen to the folk tale, The Talking Vegetables. A folk tale is a story from long ago that's been told over and over. So we're going to see animals that act and talk like people. There's going to be a problem and a solution, and then there's going to be a lesson that the character learns, a lesson that we can learn also. So remember the words pounding, smooth, delicious, stretched. Pounding, where you're hitting on something. Smooth, where it's not bumpy or rough. Delicious, where it tastes yummy. Stretched, when it becomes like wider or longer, like a stretching of a rubber band. So let's learn more about our authors.
Juan Lady Pay and Margaret H. Lapere both come from families of storytellers. Mr. Pay grew up in Africa in a country called Liberia. He was trained by his grandmother to remember and retell stories of the people that lived there. He has told his stories to thousands of schoolchildren. Miss Lapere grew up listening to English and Irish stories told by her father. Mr. Pay and Miss Lapere have teamed up to write award-winning picture books of folk tales, including The Talking Vegetables.
The Talking Vegetables. Let me turn my reading highlighter on.
Bam! 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 "Who's pounding on my door so early in the morning?" Spider shouted. "Your neighbors. It's time to clear the land for our village farm." "Go away," said Spider. "I'm tired." "But we need you," they said. "If everyone helps, there will be plenty of vegetables for all of us." Spider yawned. "I don't need your vegetables. I have plenty of rice."
Okay, so who is pounding on Spider's door? So it's Spider's neighbors, a monkey, a rooster, an elephant, a worm, alligator, and a cat. And, well, how did I know that? Well, the animals say they are Spider's neighbors, and then there's a picture of those that shows those animals. I can retell the story to help me understand it. So when I retell a story, I basically use my own words to explain what happened. So at the beginning of our story, Spider's neighbors ask him to help with the village farm, but Spider says no because he says he doesn't want any vegetables.
Everyone in the village walked down the road to a clearing in the forest. Everyone except Spider. They worked all day cutting down bushes, tearing out vines, and digging up roots. They raked smooth beds and built a waterway.
Okay, so what is the problem in the story? The problem in this story is that Spider will not help his neighbors plant a garden. And how are these characters reacting to that? Basically, they just are doing all the work themselves. But they do try to see if they can get Spider to help them. They're not giving up.
Next morning, the villagers came again to Spider's door. Bam! 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 "Who's there?" Spider called. "Your neighbors. Come help us plant the seeds." "I said no, and I meant no," shouted Spider. "Now go away."
What do we know about Spider? I know that he's loud and he really seems to have kind of a bad temper. And I know this because look at what he is saying. The author has put them in big, bold letters, like as if he is shouting. I see those exclamation points. So I know that Spider is shouting these words. So he is loud and he is not. He has a bad temper.
The villagers carried seeds to the farm and planted them in straight rows. They planted cassava, tomato, squash, pumpkin, cabbage, cucumber, pepper, and many different kinds of beans and greens.
So then we know what we know about the spider. Well, what do we know about our villagers? So our villagers, they work hard. and they seem to work well together. And I know that because it shows our animals, our villagers, working together and they're doing different jobs. And the story describes all the hard work that they're doing.
A month later, the villagers knocked on Spider's door again. Bam! 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 Spider opened his door and yelled, "What do you want now?" "It's time to weed the farm," they answered. "I didn't help before, and I'm not helping now," Spider screamed. He slammed the door and went back to bed. All the day, the villagers pulled weeds. Their knees hurt, their backs ached, and their arms were sore.
All right, so how does our author let us know that planting and taking care of a garden is hard work? Well, the author tells us the different kinds of work that the animals do and then describe how those animals feel afterwards. Their knees hurt, their back aches, their arms are sore.
In time, the vegetables began to ripen. The villagers picked what they wanted.
Okay, so let's retell a little bit. What has happened in the story since the beginning? Remember, when we retell, we tell in our own words. I can retell this story so far. The neighbors work on the garden. They keep trying to get Spider to help them, but he keeps saying no. When the vegetables are ripe, the neighbors pick them. That's what's happened so far.
One day, Spider said to himself, "I'm getting tired of rice. Plain rice, day after day after day. I live here. I'm part of this village too. I'm going to pick myself some vegetables to go with my rice." When Spider got to the farm, he couldn't believe his eyes. Huge cucumbers lay on the ground. Giant pumpkins rested under green leaves. Juicy tomatoes hung from vines.
What does the author mean when the spider says they couldn't believe his eyes? It's telling us that Spider was surprised by what he saw. Why do you think Spider is surprised by what he sees?
"Wow," said Spider. "Those tomatoes look delicious. I'll just take one, or maybe two." Spider reached out to pick a tomato from the nearest plant. The tomato shook itself and said, "What are you doing?" Spider said, "What? A talking tomato?"
All right, so why is Spider surprised now? I think he was surprised because the tomato moved and talked.
The tomato said, "Why do you think you can pick me when you didn't come to clear the land or plant my seeds or pull the weeds? Get out of here."
What do you think Spider's going to do?
Spider backed away. He looked around and said, "There are so many fat cucumbers on that vine. I'll just take one, or maybe two." But
So why do you think Spider keeps trying to pick vegetables? I think he thinks he should be able to have some even if he did not help grow them.
as he walked toward the cucumber vine, it started moving away from him. Spider was surprised. He'd never seen a moving vine before. It twisted all over the ground. "You can't pick us," said a cucumber. "You didn't clear the land. You didn't plant our seeds. You didn't pull the weeds."
Okay, so cucumbers and tomatoes reasons are exactly the same for not wanting Spider to pick them. He didn't help clear the land, and he didn't help plant the seeds or pull the weeds.
Spider ran to the other side of the farm. Ahead, he saw a perfect pumpkin, big enough, but not too big. "I'll just grab that pumpkin on my way out," he said. But he couldn't lift it. The pumpkin stuck to the ground. He tugged and pulled, but the pumpkin wouldn't move. "You can't take me," the pumpkin said. "You didn't help make the farm. Go away."
Okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to make sure I understand what's happening by retelling. And I can use the words in the pictures to help me retell this part of the story. So Spider decides that he wants vegetables. He goes to the garden and sees how delicious they look. He tries to pick the vegetables, but the vegetables won't let him because he didn't help do the work.
Spider tried to find his way out of the farm, but the vegetables reached up to grab him. Leaves covered his eyes. Stems stretched out to trip him.
So what happens when Spider tries to leave the garden? The vegetables try to keep Spider from getting away. They grab him, cover his eyes, and trip him.
Spider finally got free. He ran all the way back to the village. When he got home, he was tired and hungry. He put a pot of water over the fire and boiled some rice.
All right, so Spider gets away from the vegetables, runs home, and eats plain rice for dinner.
That night, he ate rice for dinner. Plain rice.